I'm very happy about this next guest. It is Dan Beck. I want to say he's the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and so much more. He's a songwriter. This man has been in the entertainment industry for such a long and wonderful journey, and he's here with us now to tell us some of his inside stories. How are you?
Oh, thanks, Donna. It's great to be here.
When I was doing some research on you, you have worked with celebrity after celebrity after celebrity. Including Bruce Springsteen, like used to be his body double, or they sized his suits on you?
They used to try his suits on.
Okay. So how did your journey begin? How did you get into the entertainment industry?
I started like most kids do, playing in a local band. I was from Western Pennsylvania, and a couple of us started writing songs. I was coming to New York, knocking on doors in the Brill Building, and I'd get a someone would encourage me, but I'd end up going home after a couple of days, and we come back 6 months later when we had enough money to do it. And I, after my junior year of college, I tried to get my band to go to Nashville because Dylan had been recording down there, and this writer named Chris Christopherson was starting to happen, and I thought there's more going on down there than just country music, and so I thought that might be a back door into the business. We were in a rock band, So I bought a one-way ticket, and I went to Nashville. My band decided not to go, and
wow.
I ended up over the course of the next year, I was down there for a few months, went back to college, finished school. I'd made friends down there the summer before. I went back down and went at trying to get in the music business. So,
Nashville, when you knock on the door, they answer. That's the difference. Do you know what I'm saying? When you said you made friends down there, I don't know. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in St. Louis, and I have noticed that regionally there's a little bit of difference. Or maybe in the Brill, many beautiful things happened in the Brill Building, right? But there's something special going to Nashville when you're just like there and saying, "Hey, I'm here," and they're like, "Oh, sure, you want to come over for cornbread?" Right? Do you find that like hospitality?
Well, it was much more open, and this was the early '70s, and it was a very different town then. It was very country. I was a college kid from the north, long hair. It was like I was definitely out of my element. And surprisingly, I've made friends with people like Bill Anderson and some people at ASCAP. And as it turned out, my roommate was Kinky Friedman. I don't know if you're familiar with his novels or his background as a kind of cult figure and candidate for governor of Texas. But and there was this scene happening. A lot of people had come in from San Francisco, from Haight-Ashbury, so there was a hippie environment, and the West End became kind of a scene. And I was a part of this young movement in Nashville, as it turned out. And then I got a job as a journalist, music journalist, writing for a business magazine called Record World. And lo and behold, after I'd written for them for about 3 months, the regional editor took another job, and I got the job.
And that opened doors, didn't it?
That was the big break. And then suddenly I was the guy doing the reviews for country music singles for the radio. And every promotion person in country music was calling me. And I was 22 years old. And and I was going down to Macon to see the Allman Brothers and hang out at Capricorn Records, and going to Memphis to Stax, and going to Muscle Shoals, and of course the whole Nashville scene. And I didn't know much about country music, or it was all a jam to learn it all, and it was fantastic. I was in the right place at the right time.
And you were open to being a little adventurous. Like one day you got kidnapped, you ended up at a Stuckey's.
Yes,
okay.
Well, it was actually after 2 years at Record World, Columbia and Epic Records had decided to start a publicity department in Nashville, the first one for a record company down there.
Wow.
And as it turned out, they hired me and to start this. And one of the first, as I was getting there, Charlie Rich had become a huge star.
Yeah.
And I put together, one of the first things I did on the job was to put together a press junket to Memphis to his house. And as it turned out, he took me and a couple of journalists from New York on a joyride into Arkansas. And after a number of cocktails, we ended up, in Colt, Arkansas, watching the sunrise over Colt. And now nobody knew where we were. Charlie just took us, and the state police were out looking for us. This guy was a huge star at the time, and I actually thought I was going to lose my job.
Wow.
But we got him home the next day, and it was just one of those crazy things that happened,
You made a lot of memories along the way.
Oh,
I
many.
mean, and when you're open to that, when you're open to the journey, when you're open to opportunity, when you're having fun, when you love what you do, that's where magic happens.
Yes, it is.
And
It's curiosity.
And you started out with them, like you helped as the PR person build their career.
Yes.
And so as part of it, you were like swept up into that too.
That's it. You get swept up along the way.
Now, what about your songs? Tell me about. Do you still write?
I
do you have
actually
some favorites?
do. I've been writing with a couple of friends, Gary Lucas and Jan Close. I actually encouraged them to write together, and then they got the idea because Gary had known my history as a songwriter to get involved with them, and so we ended up. We wrote about half the album together, their album Stereo Opticon together, and but it all stemmed from, I'd been a songwriter. I never really had the courage to try to live off that because it can
be very lucrative, or it might not, right?
And but I ended up, I did get to write with a lot of people. I was a lyricist, so I really collaborated. But I got to write with Dion DiMucci, Dion and the Belmonts, and Felix Cavalieri from the Rascals, and it's a number of European acts, and so I've had that along with my career as a marketing person and a strategist in the business, so that, but that kind of mostly goes back to the early days of my career,
And now you come in full circle. There's so many things that you're doing in terms of like the music.
Yes.
How do you come up with the inspiration for your songs now?
Actually, and I think this is something every writer should do, is that, I try to never lose an idea. If I have a thought for a phrase or an idea, I put it down and I throw it in a box. I keep, so sometimes I've gone back and pulled an idea from 30 years ago and reinvent it. And because, if you had a good idea, it's still a good idea. There just may not be the opportunity to present it, so you save that, and I really believe that, ideas are real things. They're, and that they float, and you just have to hang on to them.
You're a storyteller, right? You're a storyteller. So part of it might have been something that happened to you.
Very much so,
Right. So the next
and I
tune
do
will be
write
like
some of those stories now. I have a little blog that I write occasionally, and tell some of the little crazier events that have happened over the years.
Yes, and I know you have some really, really good stories. We just touched upon a few of them, but like anybody, it is about the journey. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that you are now helping other songwriters. You're a trustee of the wonderful organization. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm a trustee of the Music Performance Trust Fund, and it's a venerable trust that was started in the late 40s. And it's the relationship between the major record labels and the musicians union. And it's part of the way to help compensate musicians. And what we do, we get like a micro royalty from every record sold, and that comes into my fund. And then we provide grants to local organizations who then pay the musicians to perform live. They have to perform free, and but if there's a free event, and we do this last year over 1,700 of them in North
Wow.
America, but we in hospitals, schools, we do a thing in the city in Schubert Alley, beginning of Tony Week every year, and we do a concert, a mashup, and we bring in performers from every Broadway and off-Broadway musical, and I have a 12-piece band there, and they all come on and do one song. And we had 23 different shows represented this year, and it's free. And so it's about stimulating a musical experience and the culture of music, but also trying to put a couple of extra dollars in some musicians' pockets, you know. So
Very cool.
so that's what we do.
Recently, I got to interview a musical icon, and I've done many different musical icons, but I got to interview Tony Bennett. And the one question I asked him, I said, "Is there a song that just kind of like rattles on and on and on and on in your head?" And he goes, "Yeah, as a matter of fact." And he said, "You know, I left my heart in San Francisco." So as a songwriter, are there lyrics like, do you sleep at night and then they just kind of like are floating around? And if so, what's the song that you sing to yourself?
As far as other people's songs,
Anybody's song, yeah.
you know,
what's the music of your soul?
A song that's been really rattling around my head lately is "Natural Woman,"
Okay.
and you know, it's Carole King's song, and Louise Goff and her daughter just released it again.
Wonderful.
And the song is in my head. I can't get it out. It's one of those wonderful, great compositions. You know, I went to see the musical Beautiful, and it's a wonderful story of songwriting and the you know, the craft of it, the struggle of it, and you know, the joy of seeing one of your babies become a big hit.
And I was just going to ask you that next question. When was that moment for you that you either heard a song that you wrote on the radio? What was that, and what did that feel like?
I wrote a song. Dion Tamucci had Dion and the Belmonts, you know, and he had an album called "Return of the Wanderer," and that Cashman and West produced, and we wrote a song called "Midtown American Main Street Gang," and I had moved back to Nashville for a year and had a little management company, and I was actually going broke at the time. And but I had asked this young lady out on a date, and I just picked her up, and we were driving down Broadway in Nashville, and all of a sudden my song came on the radio, and it was like,
wow.
And it was like this overwhelming, first time it ever happened for me, this overwhelming feeling came over me, and I just turned to her and I said, "Oh, I wrote that."
Was she impressed?
Yes, she was.
And did you get a kiss goodnight?
And it was so surreal to me. It was like, wow.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it was, you know, it was just, you know, it's you know, your songs, it doesn't matter if they're hits or not, you know, it's and I've told this to the many acts that I've worked with over the years, you know, that it's, you know, it's about the completion of their work. It's about getting it there. What happens after that, as far as the public success, is out of their hands, you know.
Yeah.
It's like they have to, you know, appreciate the success of their work. And sometimes that success really doesn't happen financially for people, you know, that's the hard part. But, you know, songwriters and performers and musicians should be honored for their hard work. It's, I know one young lady that I've worked with in the past summed it up very, very well. She said, you know, it doesn't matter if it's somebody busking on the corner or it's Lady Gaga selling 20 million records. They're all working their butts off. They're all working very hard. There's nothing easy about it, you know, and we all think, oh, there's something that takes off immediately. there's usually a deep story behind it, you know. So
and it's for the love of the word, really. It's just
it.
a passion of bringing something forth from concept to creation. It's just the birth of it.
And you know what? You have to love that, because the business sometimes can make you not like it, and so you've got to love your work, and you know, and if you do, and you can be happy with that, that's what counts, you know. And my background, you know, for many years was as a strategist, marketing strategist behind artists, you know, over Charlie Daniels and Cyndi Lauper and Sade and Luther Vandross and Pearl Jam, and ultimately with Michael Jackson, I named one of his albums the Greatest Hits album, and did music videos and all those acts, and you know, they all work extremely hard, and it's tough. It's a really tough world. I've seen the success. I've seen people who haven't had that success work just as hard, and their music is just as valid, you know.
Well, maybe just like you, how sometimes you bring an old idea out of your box to the forefront. Maybe some of those songs that you think might have, maybe it's just reason, season, lifetime kind of thing. Maybe the reason is that they're supposed to take something that maybe wasn't so commercially acceptable in the past and bring it forward. Maybe we'll have inspired people to do that.
Well, that's it.
Right?
You know,
there
that's
you go.
it.
Well, thank you very much, Dan.
Oh,
Beck.
you're welcome.
Really enjoyed visiting with you.
All right.
Hey, if you have a dream, if you have a vision, you want to bring it into reality, we hope that Dan and I brought you a little bit of insight into the music industry business. Stay tuned for more on Live It Up. We believe in you, believe in yourself.